Folks, we are live and nearly on time. I don't know if we should be bragging about that, but we could. Here, I'll put the chat up there. Folks, welcome to Talking Crit. I am one of your hosts, Eric Tenkar. Alongside me, the man of the hour, Mr. Page himself. Mr. Page? I guess we call you Mr. Page. Ron Meischker.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Below me, Mike, I just
Mm-hmm.
got to say that's a good position.
Mm-hmm.
Is none other than Bad Mike Battalato, and adjacent to Mike is our one and only Jim Kitchen. You have your panel. Welcome.
What a classy show tonight, and then there's me and me, so this is great.
And classy and you. So yes, there we go. That's the way it should be.
Anyway, I'm Jim's suggestion. I'm gonna before we get into Ron is going to regale us with Paige, who this is the second year of Paige coming up in January, and an amazing guest list for a smaller con. It rivals North Texas. No, I'm just kidding. It's better than North Texas, but he's going to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about a small con I went to this weekend called Long Con because I just, I'm all about the small con nowadays, as I've said time and time again, and I cannot wait to get to Page one of these days because it's right about the size I like in that 1,000, 2,000 range. But Long Con is about 250, 300. It's about 2 hours east of North Texas, or I'm sorry, Dallas, in East Texas Pine Country. And I went through this weekend and I had an absolute blast. And once again, I realized that I just have the most fun at smaller cons. I think that's my sweet spot at this point. I don't think I'll ever be attending a Dragon Con or a Gen Con again. I'll be sticking to the pages and the game holes and the Gary cons and the North Texases and the long cons because it was just an absolute blast. There was tons of games there. Bill Barsh was there. Um, Gary, my brother was there. Sans Speedo. They have absolutely said he is not allowed to wear a speedo there because he actually did 3 years ago.
Whoa.
Unbidden. No, nobody asked him to. It's like he was confused about where he was at. Thought he was at Archon,
That
but
explains all the OSHA paperwork.
oh. So I said, you guys need. I did not crack the whip enough, and here I am, and here we are in North Texas. We're getting what we get. I said, you guys need to start cracking the whip. So they have explicitly put in their terms of service, no speedos allowed. So no, it was great. We had a really, really good time. Lots of people, probably half the people there go to North Texas. Who else was there? Oh, Dave Beatty was there. Weird Frontiers, who is a special guest at North Texas next year, along with Bill Barsh. Also, is going to be there. I met Bill's youngest daughter for the first time. Never met Anna. She's
Nice.
wonderful, really sweet. She helped him work the booth. Ken and James, the artist, was there. I'm trying to think anybody would know. Um, Jacob, and I can't remember his name. He does the Kickstarters. Oh shoot, I'll find it in a little bit. But Jacob Fleming. Jacob Fleming does. He does some really really good hex crawl Kickstarters, and I did not know that he was going to come. And I guess he's local, and I didn't know that he was there. There's a lot of DCC there. Oh, Lou was there too from North Texas. He comes to North Texas every year, and he was there, and it was just great. I had a wonderful weekend. I was really energized after that con, and like I said, I'm recommitted to the idea of the smaller con being more fun than the bigger con. I really think it's so. And next year, I hope to go to. I'm going to try to go to EggCon for the first time. There's a bunch of people I know that go to that. Jeff Delaney will be there. Um, Bill Barsh once again, Alan Hammock. So I'm really excited about going to that con. But anybody has a small con or knows a small? Oh, Don's still doing Wizard Con, right,
Yep.
Eric? So Wizard Con, I am would like to go there. It's a weird time of year for me. But we'll have Don on closer to Wizard Con. He can talk about that. But anyway, so it's a long con, long view. It's always the first or second. It's going to be the first weekend in November next year. If you're in Texas, or even if you're not, if you want to fly in, it's a 2 hour. We had a lot of people fly in from different parts of the United States, and they just drove over, rented a car, or they drove with somebody. Please think about it next year, and I'll pimp it again next year. But tonight we're gonna pimp Ron's page because I've known Ron a long time, and when he said he was doing a con, I was interested because we have a lot of the same interests when it comes to collecting. And from everything I've heard, he did the first year was a great job, Ron. And so, why don't you tell us what's going to happen year two this January?
Well, I appreciate the kind words and thank you for having me on the program again. I'm excited to be here, and of course, Eric's one of our special guests this year. We're very excited to have him out, and yeah, we have a lot going on. We do have a lot of special guests. Some of our old school guests. Some of the highlights are we've got Frank Menser, Jeff D, Zeb Cook. Harold Johnson, Donald Bingle. So that's pretty good old school lineup there. And then
A hell of a lineup, Ron. Give yourself full credit there.
well, it's only going to be as good as they are sociable when they're there. So we're not we're not holding our breath. We're not patting ourselves on the back yet. But in addition to that, we have a lot of the current content creators that'll be there. Mike Shea, Professor Dungeon Master, Bob World Builder, and Jay Scott, folks like that. They're going to be there, and so it's a good mix of old and new. I'll say.
Yeah. Well, and so it's your second year of Page. What was the biggest hurdle or the biggest learning curve between year one and year two, or what were some things you learned in year one that you really addressed in year two?
It's not my first rodeo running conventions, but it was my first rodeo in the past quarter of a century running conventions last year. So the learning curve really has everything to do with utilizing the technology that's out there, like tabletop events.
Right.
I used what I was comfortable with year one, and I realized quickly as the convention was bearing down on us. Wow, there's some things have fallen through the cracks here. And when I looked at it, I'm like, well, tabletop events could have handled that. It could have handled the volunteer scheduling. It could have handled, some of the vendor issues in terms of, them getting extra badges or ordering extra services like electric and things like that. So we really leaned into TTE this year and utilized we're utilizing everything it has to offer.
And so did that just lift a big burden off of your shoulders? I mean, did that make things just breathe a little easier?
It has. I mean, I'm lucky. We have great staff and volunteers, and I do have two very dedicated helpers this year that I really didn't have last year. When you go into year one, everybody wants to be on board. It was an opportunity to get in on something on the ground floor, and when the rubber meets the road, you really find out who's up for the challenge leading up to the convention, and then who's going to put the cleats on and really perform at the convention itself. So we learned a few things last year. We learned what the strengths and weaknesses of our volunteers and staff were, and where we needed to fill in. And like I said, I feel very lucky. Phil Wirtz on board as our head of operations. He's really pretty much a chief of staff for the entire convention. He's really picked up a lot of the slack, and frankly, he's a little smoother than I am. I have some rough edges to me. He's been able to.
I can't believe that, Ron. I can't believe that for 1 second.
Yeah,
stunned. I am stunned to hear this, Ron.
So Phil's been able to pull some things off that I wouldn't have the patience or the willingness to work on. We have a young lady named Rebecca Swesney. They've done a great job working on our social media, on our board game library and things like Board Game Swap and just getting some of our other uh, online tools ready to go. Linking in SurveyMonkey, linking in MailChimp, and things like that into tabletop events for us. So we're going to be able to connect with the participants easier. And coming out of this convention, we're going to have a strong post-convention survey because, listen, when you're at the convention and Mike, I know Mike knows this. Everyone tells you how awesome it is. Everything is awesome. It's like the Lego movie, when they're all singing, everything is awesome. But the reality is, I want to hear what wasn't awesome. And I really had to pry that out of people last year, and because we want to know where we need to improve. And I think we have a pretty good handle on it. And I also think I know what the challenges are going to be for us this year in terms of space. And we're going to be expanding our space in 2026, and it's this year we're stuffed to the gills. I mean, we've got 850 people.
That leads me to a question. I'm sorry. That leads me to a question, Ron. What kind of growth have you had over last year? Year one and now year two. What are you seeing?
Yeah, last year we were hoping for 500 people, and we ended up with 1140 when it was all said and done.
Nice.
Yeah, and this year we're already at 850 pre-registered, and we're just getting into the meat of what I'm going to call the local casual fan pre-registration. The people who are the travelers that are going to the North Texas RPG Con, going to Gary Con, going to Gamehole Con, they're going to go wherever that convention is located. Those folks jumped in early and really have supported Paige. It's the local crowd that came in droves over the final 60 days and at the door last year. So if I had to guess where we're going to be when it's all said and done, I think we're going to go in with somewhere around 11 or 1200 pre-registered based on numbers I saw last year. And we had a strong at the door last year. On Sunday alone, we had over 100 single day passes just on Sunday last year.
Wow.
So and it's going to be a challenge for us space wise. We're going to utilize every bit of space that we've rented this year, including meeting space at the primary hotel. And we're really eyeing up 2026 when we expand another 60,000 square feet. And that's when the convention takes its next step forward.
Right.
So what are the what you said really resonated with me. A lot of times you want to know, okay, great, you had a great time, but what did you not like about the con? And sometimes it's really unexpected, the things that you find that people will say, because it's something you didn't even consider. Was there something that you didn't even consider, and somebody said, we wish you had fill in the blank, and then you thought, yeah, afterwards that would have been a great idea?
Yeah, I think we dropped the ball a little bit on the food concessions at the convention center. We couldn't arrive at an agreement on food concessions. They didn't do a very good job. They didn't call me until the week before to find out what we wanted. So we ended up ignoring the policy at the convention center about outside food. I'll just say it. I bribed a couple people from the convention center, like the operations people, with donuts and coffee every morning, and they Sergeant Schultzed it for the entire convention. They saw nothing.
I do not see the Domino's pizza. I do not see it.
I smell nothing. I smell nothing.
Yeah.
Well, but,
So
but no, that's a big one because we had to do food trucks, which we've done the last few years, Ron. Because our options are very limited. I mean the hotel has great food, but it's expensive. It's pricey. There's nothing within walking distance except a really bad Denny's, and I mean a bad Denny's.
yeah.
And so the food truck thing turned out. I mean that was something that took us a few years to really realize we need to really get going with that, but it's become a real favorite now. So yeah, that's something that can easily be missed.
Yeah, we don't have a food truck option. We're at a convention center that has ample parking, and they pretty much control a half a mile radius
Mhm.
around the facility, and they don't want the food trucks there.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a tough
So
one.
we'll have to find a lot near there that people can ferry over to if we're going to do something like that in the future. Fortunately, there are restaurants nearby and some good ones, but being able to walk up to a concession stand and buy a $22 cheesesteak or something like that, because it is expensive. That wasn't really an option, and it's honestly it's not going to be that much of an option this year because the hall that houses the concession stand, we don't rent that hall, and they're not giving us public access to that
Mm,
hall. And with as many tables as we have coming in for gaming, and as many people as we have coming in, I'm not too keen on carving out 300 or 400 square feet so they can set up tables and put stuff under
Right.
heat lamps. So we're gonna go. We do have access to some vending machines this year that we didn't have access to. So people can tide themselves over with that, and our DMs and our special guests. There's going to be food in the special guest lounge and the DM lounge for people, food and drinks, and of course there's going to be food and drinks at the lounge back at the hotel, which is a little more than a quarter of a mile away, so it's not too bad.
Right.
Okay.
So, what's the thing you're proudest of in year two that you either didn't have or had less of in year one? What do you think your feather in your cap is for this year, Ron?
I think people are really enthused by the convention. They've turned out in droves to run events. We perhaps have too many events this year. Over 500 events on the schedule. So that makes me happy. Uh, Almost all of our DMs, I think, are game masters, with the exception of a couple that had some scheduling conflicts, have come back. Uh, Almost every guest has come back. There's a couple of exceptions. One didn't get invited back, and another one is out in Utah, and it's not going to work for his schedule this year. But other than that, all the guests came back, and
Nice.
I think that says a lot. Because guests, some of them have egos, and it's hard to keep all those plates in the air and keep everybody happy no matter how hard we try. And I'm glad everybody's coming back.
Well,
Well,
that's one of the things that really. I'm sorry, Jim. I was going to say
Okay.
that that's one of the things that really attracted me to that I thought was really great with your con is the amount of special guests there and the amount of named special guests. And I thought one of the funniest things I saw, Ron, you've probably seen this too. Sometimes you're criticized online as having too many guests. And have you seen that? Because I see people say that. I'm like, what's
oh
too
no,
many?
oh
There's
no,
too
it's
Yeah,
many.
getting
Oh my
it's
God,
super
too many
much.
guests,
This
special
is
guests.
terrible.
I look at special guests, and let's face it, there's Zeb Cook level special guests, and then there's uh,
Me.
there's
Yeah.
I'm not going to use I'm not going to
Car.
I'm not going to use I'm not going to use Eric as an example, but
I
but
I
we,
think
but
we know
there
I
where.
think
Yeah.
comparing me and Zed is two it's two different solar systems,
but
right?
Huh.
It's like
but
Yeah.
I'm Pluto. I'm Pluto, but I'm no longer.
It
I'm
used to
almost
be
a
a
planet.
planet, but it's not a
I
planet
I
anymore.
think I think a fair comparison would be Zeb and Mike, because you've been carrying Mike on your back all these
Oh,
years.
Wow.
that's why I got the sciatica and I needed an orthopedist. Okay.
Holy
But
crap!
but yeah, that was shots fired right there. Um,
Right in
but
the water line too.
yeah,
That was great.
Just, I mean, not untrue, but still not
but
untrue. So.
but I think all kidding aside, if somebody puts the time in to start a YouTube channel or a blog that they maintain and they get a following, or they produced small RPG supplements or things like that, they're still a contributor to the industry, and it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt anyone to recognize those people as an industry guest, right?
Oh,
Like
Absolutely.
why not? And my thought on the guests is very simple, and you know, and to Mike's point, there's been criticism about too many guests, and my thought is, if
Yeah.
we were young parents, which none of us obviously are at this point, but if we were and we were moving to a new area, we would be looking um at things like teacher to student ratios in classrooms.
right.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you know,
Right.
the thing I loved about the convention last year is that the guests were completely accessible to the attendees, and it wasn't like one or two guests where people were herding up and trying to get around them. You always had somebody to talk to from the industry, and I think we're going to maintain that this year. I mean, we've got somewhere in the range of 65 people on the guest list, and if we get 1,500 people, that's a pretty good ratio where people will have the opportunity to talk to them, meet them, and let's face it, for many gamers, to meet somebody who wrote their favorite adventure of all
Mhm.
time, or to meet
Right.
that person who produces a weekly YouTube show about the industry and that you watch, that's a big deal. And for people to get to meet those folks,
Yes.
whether they're just fans or they consider those people heroes or whatever it is, we want that to be their experience when
Mhm.
they come. We want them to have fun
Right.
and get to interact with these folks from the industry. To me, that's a no-brainer, and it doesn't cost much to do it.
And we have the same philosophy, Rod, in North Texas. We have 40 special guests. I just got the list together. You can't see it yet. Eric and Gary and I talked over it a long time, but because, and one of the things is because that's what Doug was always very big on, is that look, I want to be able to people to meet these people in a very laid back environment. Like you said, you have time for 'em, because we
Right.
all know the conventions where the guests are herded through like a cattle call, and you're like, oh, there's such and such. Oh, he just walked by, and that's the only time you see him the whole con, because they're going to be at special events, they're going to be at special dinners, they're going to be at VIP events, and it's just good to be able to sit there and have them playing games. Um, like you were telling
Yes.
me that you ran a game at the con last year, Duran, where Jeff D just came and sat in the game because don't do anything. Oh, you're running the game, I'll sit in the game. That's the kind of thing we like at North Texas too. Just have these guys actually playing games. Errol Otis used to sit at a table all the time. That was awesome for other gamers to see Errol sitting there. Steve Winter likes to play in games. Alan Hammock, all those guys, and that's just cool to see. And that's something like you said about people experiencing it, especially in Texas, which is kind of off the beaten path of conventions for years. Because most of those conventions, but look, the good ones are on the East or West Coast, or even in the Midwest, Upper Midwest. They don't get to see people like Zeb Cook ever, or Alan Hammock, or Jeff Easley, or any of these guys. And so this, and Darlene, and this is just sometimes you don't understand what a really special. We get jaded, I guess, is what I want to say, because
Right.
everybody here, we've met these people. We've seen them many times. We've run conventions. We've been at conventions, but Joe Average has not got a chance to sit down and talk to Darlene, for 30 minutes, or some of these people like that, and that's great. That's great that they can go to a con like that and they can actually interact with these people they've only heard about or read about in books. And so I think that's a big responsibility of cons is to basically get these guys and get it so Joe Average can see them, not just the VIPs and the VIGs.
Yeah,
And
and I don't think we're ever going to have any VIP events other than our Thursday night cheesesteak dinner, which is really it's for the guests and the staff and volunteers. I want to give our staff and volunteers that opportunity to meet these guests as well. And that's kind of a thank you to our volunteers at the beginning of the event. And last year, it was very. I was really moved at that dinner, and it takes a lot to move me. I'm a pretty big guy, and I really have no feelings. But we had a group from a local university. Their D&D club came out, and they were volunteers, and there were about a dozen of them, and of course, they're all 5e players, with the exception of one, who's the daughter of Ron Redmond, who I think you guys know. And but for the most part, they have no idea who Frank Menser is. They have no idea who Jeff D is. But they had an opportunity to sit with Frank. Frank just went over and plopped down at their table at this dinner, and he had them like mesmerized with his story that he was telling. And I was watching the kids' faces, and to me, with all the divisiveness we've had in the hobby, whether gatekeepers and tolerance and all these things we heard through COVID when people were just attacking each other whenever they could on social media, to see something like that, uh, it warmed my cold black heart to see it, and it meant something to me. Okay, and it stuck with me, just like Mike mentioned Jeff D coming and sitting at my table. I had to run a game because another special guest, because the special guest kind of disappeared on us, so I had to run his game on no notice. And Jeff came over and sat in the game, and I took a picture when he sat in, and I have that picture hanging up here in my game room of me and Jeff D at the table. It meant something to me, and I think everybody will get an opportunity to have one of those memories because of the accessibility of the guests. I don't want to create a situation where I'm shuttling them back and forth to special guest breakfasts where we're trying to bringing in certain people to those breakfasts or dinners. Now once we kick off the convention and we get that Thursday night dinner out of the way, the hope is that they'll interact with everybody else. We're not
and
treating them like they're Hollywood stars, in other
so,
words.
so that leads me to a question, Ron. Do you have
Yep.
some panel events for your special guests have you put together a couple of few to many events so that they can sort of bump them off of they can bump each other with stories and so forth?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we have 2 seminar areas, and they're fully scheduled out, Friday morning through Sunday afternoon, both areas up until 8 or 9 o'clock at night every night,
Right.
with seminars. And there's things like the early days of RPGs with some of the legends of the industry that are going to be there. They'll sit in on that, and they'll tell their stories. There's some guys running something called How to Start a Kick-Ass YouTube channel. Okay, I think it's Professor Dungeon Master, right?
Yeah, it's not Eric. I figured it wasn't Eric because this is not a
We're
kick-ass
doing a seminar on
channel.
similar, but yeah,
Ow!
listen, I go to
Ow!
conventions. I want to go to seminars over gaming. I can game with my local group, but
Sure.
you hear people talk about the hobby that I'm not going to hear otherwise.
Mhm.
Is is something that I cherish. And when I go to North Texas, I have more fun talking to people that I haven't seen ever or haven't seen in a year, and you're making new connections. Or somebody goes, uh, the first time that I realized that people were listening to my podcast was at Game Hole, I guess 2018, 2019. And I'm online for breakfast and I'm talking to Rach, and I hear, I know that New York accent anywhere. And I'm like, wait, they're talking about me. Yeah, because you're listening to my podcast. And they came up and said, hello. And that's what conventions I like. I had my Jeff Grubb story where Mike loves to tell that one, but because Jeff tells Mike that one, there is a point when you meet your hero, and Jeff was one of my heroes from when I was gaming at back in the TSR days, and I was like, finally meet Jeff, and what do? I let the elevator close because he knew who I was. I did the hummer. I did the Jackie Gleason. I did the it's like, oh, you're in a tank car. Boom. And they go, what the hell just happened? I go,
my hero. Oh, door shut.
Oh my God, are you sure it wasn't Wit?
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue when you mention Wit. There was a question in the chat: is Wit one of the special guests?
Oh,
the answer is no.
I think the answer is hell no. You were just kind enough not to say it.
By the way, so Eric Jeff will be a guest again this year, so you have a chance to actually sit down with your hero.
We may be able to reenact that.
Hang out. Yeah, reenact it. We'll go to the elevator and film that. Yes. So you'll get your second chance with Jeff. So don't blow it this time.
I've seen Jeff at other conventions, and when I see him, he just looks at me and smiles and points and keeps on walking because he remembers it too.
He got a kick out of that. He told me, he brought up that story at GaryCon this year. Because when I talked to him, he said, "Oh yeah, you and Eric did that show. Oh my gosh, I always remember Eric he remembered Eric in North Texas like 2017. He remembered that story. And oh my gosh, he still remembers Eric making a fool of himself. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Ron, are you going to be taping some of these panels to share on a page channel?
Yeah. I just got some statistics from Phil, who's in the chat. We've got 38 panels and/or seminars scheduled.
Now,
19 of those, or roughly half, will be streamed live.
Fantastic. That's huge.
And they'll typically be the larger ones. And one other thing here, Wizard Tower Games dropped me a note. Sure, I'm happy to talk to you about what and provide whatever information I can to help you out.
Very cool.
And I think that's a great. I mean, one of the things that I would say is everybody that we have interacted with at any level of show, whether they've been doing this for 10 years, almost 20 years, there is a real willingness. Anybody watching this should know if you would like to try to kick off a small convention, and I don't say that pejoratively, but if you would like to kick off a convention in your area, there's no shortage of great cons that have been there and done that and have a lot of lessons to impart that they're more than willing to do.
Right.
Now, I would say, we joked once before, Matt Forbeck is probably the hardest working freelancer I've ever known. And Matt will always say, every minute on the phone with a freelancer is a minute you are costing them money. And I would always just say to people, be aware of that. Be conscious of the fact that somebody is giving you their most precious commodity, which is time. But you'll still find an absolute willingness to try to help you understand that. And Ron, I think that's just great on your part. You join a long list of great people more than willing to help get other conventions going. That's great.
Yeah, you have to. We have to help others, right? We have to support people who support us, even if the support is just moral support. That's just good living doing that. So I mean that it's not even a second thought. And to Gary Oliver, the fact that you arrived to this interview session late because it was Lisa's birthday that just shows how effed up your priorities are, my friend.
Tell him all the time. I'm stuck with him as a partner, Ron. This is what I have to deal with. Is he shirks his job, but
Oh
Uh,
my
you know,
God.
I don't mind carrying the guy because he's a good guy. You got so. By the way, for those who are not in the know, Ron was at Game Hole. I was at Game Hole. Jim was at Game Hole. And Gary was at Game Hole. So we've all met. We're having a good time here. We're all just joking around here. So, Ron, I want to ask you about something. This is more logistics things, planning convention. So when Doug and I chose North Texas, we were looking. Okay, when can we have a convention? No, June, and you realize when you have to choose a weekend, it's always going to be somebody's worst weekend, right? There's always going to be somebody complaining that,
Right.
well, that's weekend I can't make it. But it's important to choose a time and stick to it because as your con becomes known for that time of the year, it's just better for a con. That's just the way things are. If you
Well,
you want
people
to have
can
it at the same
plan.
time,
Yeah.
yes. So you have an unusual time for your con. It's right at the beginning of the new year, and I say unusual because I don't normally think about going to Philadephia in January. That's just not on my game plan normally. But talk us through that a little bit. Why was that the chosen time? Um, were you worried about any kind of issues with that? Like most, I would think weather is always kind of in the back of your mind. Just tell me a little bit about that. Talk about that.
You know, I was more concerned about forcing people to make decisions about whether they want to take a chance on a first year convention if it's too close to Game Hole Con, or if it's too
Mhm.
close to North Texas, or if it's too close to Gary Con. And I think the crowds are kindred crowds at those four conventions. So the way I looked at it is, we've got uh, you know, every 3 months is a quarter. It just lined up. You've got January, March, June, October, right? So not forcing the travelers who fly out to these conventions to have to make a decision to skip one or the other, that was important.
Sure.
Trying to respect the other conventions and not crowd them schedule wise. So that was fully the thinking there.
Mhm.
Like,
No, that's important too because one of the we all kind of have our little. We're not competing.
Right.
We all
no,
do things. We're doing everything a little differently. It's not a competition at all, and it does help to have it spaced out like that. I mean, one of the things that gets me is that we had June already, and then Origins decided to switch about 2 or 3 years in and have their convention 2 weeks after ours. And I was like, "Fuck you guys!" But because
How do you really
before
feel?
we had the whole month of June to ourselves, and then Origins decides to horn their way in. But yeah, it helps to have them all spaced out like that. Look, I'm glad you have that time of year. It's just that I went to SnowCon in Maine years ago, and it's in January. It's insane. It's insane, but I did it. Um, it wasn't the best circumstances to have a convention in Maine, but they do it tongue in cheek, right? It's called SnowCon. That they have their list of cons. They'll have like canceled this year. They have like what the dates, and then like year 5 canceled, year 10 canceled because of the snow. That's the only thing I worry about is just weather there. But you didn't have any problems last year. Everybody, I think
no,
you had a big giant snowstorm like 2 weeks later, but
no,
you
no.
were fine.
It snowed on Saturday.
Oh, it did. Okay.
But you know what? It didn't impact anything. And my thought on the snow is this. People were asking about the snow and what are you going to do? And like, if there's not a state of emergency called, we're going to game through it.
Right.
We're
Mhm.
we're from the Northeast. You drive in the snow, and that's how it works. For the people coming in from other states, which again, I like to call them the travelers. This year we've got 42 states represented in our
Wow.
registration list, right? Um, they're flying in and they're Ubering over, or they're taking a shuttle or whatever it is. The snow doesn't impact them. Only if they're stuck in Philadelphia for an extra day or two. But frankly, you know, last couple of years, last several years, there hasn't been a lot of snow in Philadelphia
No.
over the winter. I mean,
Yeah, New York neither.
I'm not making any global warming statements here, but there just hasn't been snow, and so I'm not too worried about that. I'm more worried about, you know what, if I went, we moved into Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, which I think is a great weekend for a convention anyway. But if I went 6 weeks later and said, you know what, I'm going to go mid-February, I still have the same weather concerns,
Mhm.
and now I'm going like this with total confusion, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And
Yep.
for me, let's not force people to make choices. Let's 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 try to get people on a schedule where they're saying, hey, these are the 4 cons or 5 cons I'm going to go to a year, and spread them out, so people can breathe a little bit. And
Mhm.
hopefully, if what Alex from Gamehole Con is rolling out with his organized play, that might be something that all of the cons I mentioned in terms of Gary Con, North Texas, Page, and of course Gamehole. We might be the key guinea pigs for his organized play efforts. And if we remember how successful RPGA Living City was over the years ago, where people would travel all over the country because, oh my God, this convention in East Appalachia has a first run event. They would roll in there in droves because it was something that they wanted to be involved with, but they also made friends with the other people who were engaged in that kind of ongoing campaign.
Yeah, and TSR used to have Winter Fantasy, which was in
Oh yeah.
January, and it did very,
which
very well.
which I used to drive to from New Jersey.
Right.
And you know what? I hit snow 75% of the time on that drive. It didn't
and I
impact
think
me. Yeah.
I think people don't understand that, between Thanksgiving and the holidays at Christmas time, by January, people are tired of their family. They've gotten something for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
They're ready to like get away from their family and do other things. And I think January is a perfect time to have a show. I think it's a
Except for
great time to have a show.
except for Heidi and Eric, they're still in the honeymoon phase. They're not trying to get away from each other.
Not yet. Give them a few years. They'll be trying to do that. No, that's great. I mean, like I said, I'm really excited about the fact, and we talked about this after COVID. It's like the convention the convention world just blew up. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had our best attendance ever the last few years. We sold out last year in April, which we never even have sold out, but much less April, which is insane. And everybody else is doing the same thing. I mean, Game Hole's numbers were up this year. Little cons like Long Con are getting more people. It's just a really great time to be alive if you like to go to cons, because there is a lot of good cons out there, and they're all doing really, really well.
Yeah.
Well, and the ecosystem has grown to support, just as we saw fifth edition raise all the water with so many people in the hobby, we've got now the same thing where now there are so many people and the regional cons are serving the needs, right? That's what's so great about small regional cons, is that they can draw enough people to be not only profitable but sustainable, and that's what's fabulous, right? We're talking about cons that can, if you can get 300 400 people together, you've got a con that can percolate along, as long as you're smart about it. And again, that's what's so great about this. We have 10 15 plus year veteran cons that are established, that are selling out, that are filling their hotel space, that are filling their I it's a little bit outside of RPGs, but Adepticon has grown and grown and grown, and now they're at Mecca for Milwaukee. And that's And it's a thing that started with 10, 12 guys who just wanted to get together and play. And it's just great. If we are in a golden age of role play and a golden age of miniature gaming, we're in a golden age of conventions too.
Absolutely, yeah. This reminds me of the '80s. You know, there were so many great small cons in the '80s, just in Texas. You know, you had AggieCon and WarCon, and there was one at UT, and there was just so many little conventions, and just like they all kind of dried up in the '90s and the aughts. I remember one of the reasons we started North Texas in 2009 is I looked and there just were none. There and every con there was running Magic and Third Edition. That was it. There wasn't
Yep.
anybody running just
Yep.
like old. There was no old school tracks. Actually, I take it back. There was one convention that had old school track. That was Total Con. Total Con had Frank Menzer there, who was running like 4, 6 events, and that was it. That was the old school track at every. I looked at every con in the United States at that time, and there was nothing there. But yeah, the golden age of old school tiny cons was '70s and '80s, and it just all kind of blew away, and now it's all kind of coming back, which is great.
Yep.
It's really exciting to hear about all these cons that just pop up every time I look, it seems like there's another tiny con popping up here and there.
So Ron, what's your best piece of merch for the show that nobody knows about yet?
Well, I think our T-shirts are pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think our mascot miniatures are pretty cool. Our cheesesteak mimic, Phil E. Cheesesteak. He, those were a pretty sought after item last year. We've got nice pins that are nice and colorful. What is this? Is Gary trolling me? Is that a troll, Gary?
No, Gary is announcing, which is true. We will be having a North Texas Game Day weekend, January 24th, 26th. We talked about it Long Con, and he is put a stamp on there. So the weekend after Page, if you feel like you need some more gaming, fly into Dallas, and we have this it will be at the Westin, same place we have North Texas. It's going to be probably Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So yes, not trolling, just spreading the word, man.
So-
Or trolling. He could be trolling too. I don't know.
So Ron, what was your first show? What was your first show experience like? Where did you go? What was it like? Did the show continue? Did the show die a horrible death? What's the Ron first show?
First show I organized, or first
No, first show you
I
went to.
attended.
13-year-old Ron's got his $10 bill. Where's he going?
Went to Gen Con East.
Yeah.
That was overwhelming, to be honest with you. Went to a lot of little local shows here in the Delaware and Lehigh Valley. Went to many Lehigh cons over the years. Really enjoyed it. Atlantic Con, which was or Atlantic Con, which basically got consumed by Origins, as you know, in the '90s there. Things really started to, I loved Total Confusion for many years. I would go up to Total Confusion. Unfortunately, some friends of mine that ran a store up in that region and used to go every year, and I looked forward to seeing them. There was like a tragedy at their store. The store burned down, and it kind of sucked the life out of it for me. But yeah, I mean, I the smaller cons I really enjoyed. The bigger conventions, they kind of beat you up a little bit. You know what I mean? Especially at that time when you're pre-internet, we'll call it. You didn't know all these people, right? You didn't know all the people that you know now through interacting with them online. So it was a little more challenging to make those connections. I mean, it was just a perfect example would be I had the best time at Gamehole Con just hanging out with Mike and Bill Barsh and just shooting the breeze with them. And Mike and I hadn't seen each other in person in 30 years probably.
Yeah.
Or more.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And but you know what? We had a great time because we've gotten to know each other through online activities, and you know that made it great. It was a little harder um, back then because you didn't have that. You didn't have the foreplay of meeting each other on the internet first.
No, that's a good point, Rod. No, that's
Oh,
social
yeah.
media has changed a lot of that. That's the first Gen Con I went to wasn't until 2006, and that was only because I'd met so many people online that were going. I'd
Yeah.
always wanted to go, and then I met my buddy John Lyle, who I met through the AKM, who said, "You know what? I'm going to go this year, and you're going to go with me, and we're going to drive up there." And I said, "All right." And so I knew so many people that were going to be there from the AKM forum that it was just like I went there and like, oh, all these guys I've known for years and years on the AKM, and now I'm getting to meet them. But that has changed. That has really changed that whole aspect of
Mm,
going to
hold on.
conventions. The
We have a
social media.
we have a cameo. My wife just came into the game room. My
Hey,
wife
hey.
Jennifer.
Hello. Bye.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
But that
So
was what you said, right? I was going to say real quick. We went. I just got a message from Bill Barsh. I'm going to out him here because we sat and we talked a lot at Long Con, and he said, "You know what? I really enjoyed that. That's something I missed from the early days in North Texas when you weren't so busy. It's just sitting down and talking." And that's something we did a lot at Gamehole Con. And I'm going to tell you, the first 2 or 3 nights I was there, I laughed so hard a few times in that I was literally on the floor and I couldn't breathe. I mean, because we were just having a great time. We with Bill Meinhardt, Jim and I had an inside joke that will remain nameless. That we laughed so hard that we just couldn't even talk. And then, like you said, seeing Ron and everybody, and we just had a great time. It's just great. Look, if you want to go to a con, people go to cons for different reasons. I know people go to cons and they game every session. All they do is they game. They schedule something every single session of game. I know people that go there and they go for auction. There's some people that go there to meet special guests, but some people like myself and like other people I know, they just go to socialize.
Yeah.
And there's guys they know online they don't get to see in person very often, and I mean, Eric and I talk all the time, probably almost every day, but it's still great to see him in person and say, hey, what's up, dude, and
The
and
most
unfortunately,
important part about conventions is, yes, we're all on the internet. Yes, we're on social media somewhere. But when you go to a convention, you are shoulder to shoulder, and you know you're not alone.
Right.
That all these other hundreds of people care about it the same way, care about it in different ways, but care about it to the same degree. You meet like-minded men and women. You spend time hanging out. You can make inside jokes that they can get. They help you polish off your rough edges, and conventions make you better people. And that's the single greatest thing about conventions. Yes, there's the auction. Yes, there's the gameplay. Yes, there's tournaments. Those are all smaller facets or subsets. But really and truly, the reason people want to put on a convention, the reason that people want to go to a convention is they want to meet people who are also in the hobby. And that's the single best thing about it.
yeah, you're with your people.
Yes.
You know,
absolutely, yeah.
even if you've never met them, they're still your people. They're still like-minded people. And I spoke about earlier about divisions in the gaming community online, especially during COVID. The different communities arguing with one another. Let's face it, that shouldn't amount to anything because where all gamers are in alignment is around the gaming table. They're all there to have fun, and it doesn't matter who you voted for.
Right.
When you're sitting at the gaming table, it doesn't matter who you're
Yeah.
sleeping with. It doesn't matter,
Well, as long as you're not sleeping with somebody's wife, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
No, that's a place that, look, Gary and I, and then Doug before that, we have had a long tradition of no politics in the convention. Zero.
Yeah.
None, nada.
Right.
We don't care. Just come and sit down and game. And it's amazing the kind of people that have tried to horn that in over the years, and we're just like, nope, we're not doing it. We're not gonna play
It's
that game.
adult swim, kids get out of the pool.
Yeah,
right?
we're here to play games and just play games, have a great time. People go to cons to escape that stuff. They really do, and they tell us that they say, "Look, I'm going to your con because." We've had people post not even just kind of maybe vaguely political stuff on our page, and people like, "Look, I just come here to game. I just want a game," and like yeah, okay, we agree. You're right. Let's just have a great time. Let's go there and have a great time in game.
Did anyone see this scandalous comment from Kim George in the chat?
Which
And
one? Boy,
I'm
she
gonna
makes them
quote this
every day.
directly. We had so much at Gamehole Con.
Oh, wow.
That sounds
Uh,
about like Kim. Yeah, not
So that would be
surprised.
peppermint schnapps, Pixie.
uh-huh, uh-huh. There was something Jim touched on earlier, and a question came up of, learning curve with a convention. For me, not having run a convention in 25 years, it was a totally different promotional world than it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Wasn't struggling for snail mail lists and trying to get other conventions to share resources with you. It wasn't the game store owners that didn't want to see you in their store with a poster because they didn't want their customer base leaving the store to go buy something from someone else.
That sounds like M. Phoner's Games Only Emporium. Sorry.
Yeah. It that had gone away because the internet opened it up and game store owners realized they have to be open to everything and be more supportive, right? And gone were the days of having to tear out a grid sheet where you X'd off the events you wanted to play in out of the back of the registration book and stapling your check to it and throwing it in an envelope, right? It was a
Oh,
totally
yes.
different, it was a totally different promotion, going about and finding the people who would want to attend. And I enjoyed figuring that part of it out the best I could. But just to I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that was a huge leap from where we were 25 years ago. I remember, talking about scheduling how conventions in the Northeast, whether it was ConCon or Total Confusion or 3 or 4 of the New Jersey conventions, a couple of Eastern PA conventions, there used to be a convention coordinators committee that would meet twice a year to go over schedule. Like that's how important schedule was to make sure you weren't bumping into other people in the region or getting too close. So it's definitely a different animal now, but it is a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I was talking about this with somebody this week that science fiction conventions in the 70s, they were always trying to avoid stepping on each other. Creation was the big was the 800-pound gorilla, and then you had smaller shows that were trying to compete for guests and trying and so on and so forth. And one of the things that fandom sort of created was the secret masters of fandom, this sort of nebulous cabal that controlled science fiction conventions and so on. And really what it was, the root of it was exactly what you said. It was a scheduling committee where they were just trying to make sure everybody got a slice of the pie. Creation didn't care, but everybody else did. And that's why
Right.
you have all these little carve outs of these little small what started off as Star Trek conventions, Space 1999, blah, 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 blah. And that's how they resolved that in the pre-internet days, which makes perfect sense. But then people would be like, well, who's pulling the strings? Well, it's the guy smart enough to make sure that you don't schedule 2 shows 120 miles apart on the same weekend. So, yeah. So, Ron, you've got an impressive wall behind you. What's the thing that you're most proud of back there?
That's the That's not the impressive wall. I probably have 50,000 painted fantasy miniatures.
Jesus.
I would. I'm probably being conservative. I mean, if I were just
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, that's glorious.
you know,
Good
I mean, and
Lord. There's enough lead in there to
We
poison the population of
Ron, we lost
Michigan.
your mic.
Oh yeah, we lost your sound.
Oh, he's turning it into that kind of
Oh
show.
there.
Get
Oh
ready.
no. Oh no.
That's right. You paid for extra, Ron, and you're getting extra, Ron.
Not HD is not my friend.
Oh, we lost you again.
We had you for a second.
We had you for a second, and we lost you, Ron. Sorry.
Hmm.
I feel bad. That's all right. 50,000 painted miniatures. My God, I didn't even think it was possible. I probably have 50,000 unpainted miniatures.
Yeah, about to say most of us
Gee,
that many. They're in boxes. They're in
Yeah,
boxes and
that-
piles.
Yeah, you don't want to see you don't want to know about the unpainted. It's a real
That's
it's,
all right. You know,
it's a real
if
challenge.
on the day you paint your last miniature, on the day you paint your last miniature is the day you die. I think I'm immortal to a factor of 7.
I've come to the realization that I'm not going to paint everything.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
No.
But I
started
can
letting
look at
stuff
them.
go, and I'm not. Yeah.
I can look at them and enjoy them, and I'm starting to let some stuff go. Mike and I had I don't know what Mike's doing in his square there, but it didn't look.
No,
look
neither
good.
is Mike. Mike's had a little bit too much to drink.
Mike and I had a great conversation at Gamehole Con about letting go some things out of collections, and I've got a sizable collection. You look back here and you see the second edition stuff back here. This is just the game room library. It's not the collection, and
Right.
and for me, we're going to start moving some stuff along, and we had a great talk about what happens to your game collection when you pass to the great beyond, and we're going to be doing something at North Texas that's going to be talking about that. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a panel. We're going to have a great time with that. We really, really are. And that's the kind of panel where I mean, truthfully, I think we should record that, and we need to have that out there for people to be able to watch and see and have some real lessons learned. I think that's going to be one of the best panels we do this year.
So now, Ron, whatever was affecting you is now affecting Mike. Okay, so we're gonna pass it around like a hot potato, because now Mike's having audio issues, or he's just having mic issues. I'm not sure.
That could be.
It could be. Oh.
So, Ron, what's the shield to your right behind you? I see the shield on the wall.
$10 flea market purchase that I took the handle off of and screwed it to the door.
That's great.
Nice.
That's excellent. So what else do you want people to know about Page? Right? I mean, that's the subject of the night. What's the sort of closing argument of why you should come to Page if you haven't signed up to come to Page yet?
I think Page is a great opportunity here in the East for folks to, if they want to travel out here and come to the convention, they're going to see a lot of gaming. They're going to get a high dose of guests, and they're going to have a good time. I mean, we really stress to our staff and volunteers, treat everybody the way you'd want to be treated. I have been to conventions in the past where maybe the staff isn't so friendly. And I understand sometimes it's a high stress situation, but we try to stay away from that. And, for folks that have never been to a convention, or maybe haven't decided on a convention, pick some of these conventions we're talking about, and to bring up a theme that's already been discussed. Come be with your people.
Yeah.
Come play games. Come have fun. At Page, you've got a lot of interesting stuff going on. You've got all those seminars. You have a great flea market that takes place on Friday or Saturday morning. We've added a board game swap for Sunday. We've added a dice trading time slot for people who want to trade dice, because there's a big dice collectors following that comes to Page for Friday night. I'm real happy with some of our seminars. As I said, I think there's a great one that Heather Ashcraft and other women in the industry are putting forward, called Same Table, Different Voices, talking about the struggles and the triumphs they've had in the industry. In fact, Jen Glazer's part of that panel. Anna Meyer's part of that panel. So it's going to be a great panel, and we've got a nerdy knowledge trivia contest with Ronan Wong, who's going to be the host for that, and our charity auction is excellent. Last year raised a load of money, had a lot of great items come in. This year, the items coming in are, kind of blowing my mind. Somebody just sent us a bunch of Jim Ward collection stuff that arrived today to go into the auction, which I think is, outstanding. And some other collectors from around the country are chipping in and sending some things in. So we're going to be making some announcements about some great items hitting the auction again this year soon. And our auction will be virtual. So if you can't make it to Philadelphia, you can jump in, buy a bidder card, and bid virtually.
And the one thing I think that you didn't touch on that I would just say, and we all talk about this all the time on this show, the people who created whatever version of D&D that you really loved, they're getting older. Frank has got some very public health problems he's talked about. You should assume that the convention that you might see them at might be the last time you ever get a chance to see them. And I would really stress, if you're in the Northeast and you've got some things and you'd like to get Frank to sign them, you'd like to get some other folks, if you just want to tell them how much what they created meant to you, this is a great opportunity to take that time and say that thing before you don't have a chance to say it to the people that made a difference in your life when you were younger. And I really, really stress that. I really, really do.
Just to touch on Frank's a Philadelphia guy.
Yeah.
He grew up just outside of Philadelphia in Delaware County, which is, it might as well be Philadelphia, right? It's a bordering county. And we were happy to be able to bring him in last year. And I'll say this, we know about some of the issues that were out there with Frank. He talked to everybody who came through the door. He sat at registration when he wasn't running games and greeted every person who came through the door. And he was an outstanding guest last year. I mean, he really put his all into it. And, people are looking forward to seeing him again this year as a result. So, yeah.
That's just great. Yeah. That really is. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. All right, Mike, are you fixed yet?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
I just wanted to make sure.
Unexpected. I had a Ron issue there. It just started saying your headphones are disconnecting for some odd reason. I'm like, I don't know why. I have plenty of power, so I don't know why. So no, I'm okay. I'm live and two live crew over here, so I'm all right. Well, Ron, so give it once again. What are the dates of the show? And we're talking January 18th. When does it start?
It's January 16th to the 18th. There's a Thursday night time slot, and then it just goes into full-blown convention mode Friday morning through Sunday afternoon. You know, if you can make it out, great. I know we have a few badges which were donated to us, meaning folks purchased badges specifically because they wanted them to be given away to people who were struggling financially.
That's awesome.
So if you're out there and you're struggling financially, reach out to me. And then finally, the convention's a 501c3 charitable organization, and our main charitable initiative is what we call the Gamer Assistance Program. And it's specifically meant to help people in the industry or previously of the industry who are experiencing financial hardships. I simply got tired of seeing creators and authors and artists having to go to GoFundMe to repair cars and fix roofs. So we wanted to do something that was going to be able to give back. And that's what the Gamer Assistance Program does. And, the donations that come into our auction, 100%, actually it's 110% with the buyer's premium, goes directly into that fund of the Gamer Assistance Program. And then everything else that's consigned to the auction, it's 10% from the seller and 10% from the buyer. So 20% of the sale price goes into the Gamer Assistance Program. And we've been able to write some checks to people who are in real need, who are from the gaming industry. And, I'm very proud of that. So, come do some good, come roll some dice, and don't be shy if you're having some financial difficulties. Reach out to me. You can talk to me privately. We don't publicize who we give grants to because we're not looking to embarrass anybody. We want people to feel like they can come forward, provide that information, and go. We just want to be able to help people out without a lot of hubbub, and not use it as a marketing tool to say, hey, we did this for this person.
Right.
That's not what we're looking to do.
That's very cool.
No, that's a great charity, Ron, and I think you serve a good purpose there. And I've donated some stuff, and anybody that thinks about donating some stuff should contact you and ship you some goodies, because that is an absolute, in our community, that's something that we talk about a lot, is that a lot of these guys that worked in gaming just didn't have retirement programs, and a lot of them just need the money, and it breaks my heart when they have to run GoFundMe's all the time just to
Yes.
just for medical
Just to get by.
needs. Yeah.
David Sutherland died of a curable form of cancer because he got laid off from Wizards of the Coast. And you can never forget that. You should never forget that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but I appreciate you having me on the show. If anybody wants to check out the website, it's PhillyGamingExpo.com, and there's a discount code for the convention specific to Eric Tenkar.
Oh,
You want to call that out, Eric, or did you forget you have it?
I probably can't remember it, so let you do
Okay,
it.
let me use technology here. I am in my mid-50s, so technology is
Yeah,
a
tell me about
struggle.
it.
Hold on. We're gonna gotta turn the phone, and we have to hit the discounts button, and then we're gonna see. Let's see. It's Tenkar's Tavern. with both T's capitalized, all one word, no possessive symbol before the S. So it's TENKRS TAVERN with the 2 T's capitalized, and that is
like on the bottom of the screen right now.
Yep, and that is valued at $10. And Eric has agreed to match every time the discount's used to match $10 into the Gamer Assistance Program.
Awesome.
Actually, no.
I just threw that part in. He didn't.
No, you can say that because listen, I've said it before and I've said it again. If you know this channel, if you know the blog, when there are gamers in need and there's financial issues, and there's a GoFundMe, I often try to do a match. I often match the first $250. I'm not rolling in money, folks. This is your money. This is when you use the drive-through affiliate links or use the Humble Bundle affiliate links. This is your money funneling back to the community. So I am really excited and happy to do that. To use the code below, folks, I will be. Page is my first con of the year. By the way, just to let Mike know, a little reminder. So at Page, I'm a special guest. At TotalCon, I am a media guest. At WizardCon, I am a special guest. At Central New York Con, I'm a special guest. At ShireCon, I'm a special guest. I'm just throwing it out there, Mike. Just throw it out there. No.
Throw it out there. I'll catch it, and I'll right back to you.
You can catch me in 2026 because that's when you'll be showing up a Page anyway. So we'll discuss it then.
Holy crap! Is it Jim? Does it sound like you that he's getting an agent anytime soon? He's
just
trying to.
Oh, I think what I just heard was Eric asking for a very special badge for North Texas.
Oh, I got a
special badge. I got a special badge for him right here.
I already had my sponsor badge from years ago. So
I got a special badge for him.
That was actually fun.
Ron, it sounds like just an amazing convention. Thank you for coming on and talking about Page. It's just great.
By the way, stick around, Ron. We're going to talk a little current event thing if you want to make some comments or stuff. I actually don't know what we're going to cover because
we got all sorts of stuff to cover.
I was at Long Con and I missed out on Eric's great, awesome, incredible show this last week.
We had 2 shows last week that were barn burners.
Oh, I have not had a chance to watch the Whit Whitman takedown.
You haven't seen the Whit?
No. Would you care to summarize that for those who have not had a chance?
Well, listen, there will be. I found out today.
I got popcorn. I don't have popcorn.
I found out today. All right, that we will be putting together, me and an informed individual, of a fact-checking episode of all of the supposed facts that and presented that we can. I don't know if we can do Pinocchios or not, but yeah, we'll be doing that. Mike, I've known you for well over a decade at this point. I don't think you've actually seen me fall into cop mode properly, but I
heard. I heard this. I heard.
Yeah. Even Rach was like, "I know that voice." I'm like, She's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen you in action," but she goes,
I heard you. I heard you perp walked him, which was awesome. You gave him the perp walk. So I just haven't had time to, just got back from the con, trying to get ready for my trip next week, and I have not had a chance. But you know what? I'll be on a long trip tomorrow, 9 hours in the car. I will have that on, and I will get to experience it. And I think I'm going to love it. I think I'm going to love it because most people that I know that have seen it and talked to, they said it was an instant classic. Classic.
And it's funny because remember, he asked to come on this show a year and a half ago, emailed me his cell phone number and said, text me. Kind of weird. It's kind of it's kind of like somebody like dropping their phone number at the bar in front of you. Like, this is not a date that I want to pick up. But Ken is persistent, and he followed up this time with Don. Don was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, hey, I'll stay in the background. And Ken insisted I be part of it. So I don't want to ruin it, but we're going to do a lot of fact checking. We're going to have a fact check follow up on that.
So you have to have an whole episode just to fact check that episode because it was so egregious. Oh my god!
Yeah, and I may have to go through my records and find my interview with the lady from Atlanta that was doing his wash and cooking his meals after being.
I suspected that his redemption tour was just going to involve him just saying that's all lies. I never did any of that.
No. It wasn't. It wasn't that. That's
what I'm saying. That's what I thought it was going to be.
I'm a new person. Not telling you how I'm a new person because that would require actual effort.
Oh.
But I'm a new person. I did bad things, but I'm not that person anymore. So what about all the pencil dice that you claim that you own blank pencils and you have the embosser and you can't crank out 50 pencils a day? What about that? So in any case, that'll be a fun one, Mike. But
every person that's not every person, but every other person that gets sent to prison that finds Jesus is that they Whit knows how that works. So yeah, that's probably what we're looking at. But yeah, that'll be fun. I'm looking for. I've got some special streams and podcasts saved up, so I'll definitely throw that on tomorrow as I
that's
make a long car ride. I may listen to it more than once. Even I maybe enjoy it so much that I have to rewind it and go back again because it's been a long time coming. So
yeah, no, it was interesting.
And you even got some kudos from people involved. Apparently, I won't name names, but apparently you were contacted by some people involved that said, "Way to go!"
when I think you're sharing something, Ron.
What's that?
Oh,
okay. I have that shirt, by the way.
I can't believe there's not one of me on the can somewhere. I mean, like he stuck a hidden camera in the bathroom there. My God. So
following him around.
Who wouldn't want to follow this guy around? Come
on. I heard that the pictures I didn't share just now are going to be making a very prominent appearance at North Texas.
Oh
no, they should because
they've been handed over to a quote unquote helper to deal with.
I'm going to throw this at you. I appear at North Texas every year in a devil's outfit. I don't know if there's anything you can do to embarrass me at this point. I've already taken that to a new low. To a new low every year.
One of the devilettes was very happy to get a hold of those.
Oh, of course she was.
Of course.
They both were, yeah. So
and by the way, reminder, she can't win any more prizes on this channel.
No, she's not going to allow to win anything. And if she keeps it up, she's Look, Jen, I can get younger at that position. I can interview girls tomorrow. So, if you want to fight fire with fire, I'm just saying you might want to back off a little bit, Jen, because this is not good. This is not looking good for your future employment.
Or it might not look good for you, Mike. I'm not sure which one it is. But.
You think I could do it up there by myself? Hell no. I'm bluffing. I couldn't do that up there by myself. There's no way. So what else? What do we have in current events this week, Eric? Anything we need to be aware of?
Well,
current events in gaming.
Was it Bell of Lost Souls had a huge article on the effect of the impending Trump tariffs on the world of gaming.
That's interesting too. Can you go into more detail? Because I just skimmed that. I know what you're talking about.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
Well, but the big problem is tariffs on overseas products are going to affect some of the biggest companies in the industry.
Sure.
Because almost everybody's offshore printing with China and Games Workshop manufactures in England.
Well,
if the new administration takes really, really aggressive measures to cut inflation, I'll give you the. Hold on one second. I need a sheet of paper. Here we go. This is what Johnny Carson used to do. He used to be like, "Okay, let me open the envelope.
Yes.
Prediction of the future."
There we go.
Okay, so here's the Jim Kitchen 5 cent theory on what the first 3 or 4 months of the year is going to look like. The easiest way to suddenly fight inflation and strengthen the dollar is open the oil pumps and let them go nuts.
Yep.
And so you're going to see an explosion of activity in the Permian. You're going to see an explosion of activity in the North Bakken, and you're going to see so much oil pumping in this country. It's going to put easily 150,000 plus people into jobs making $75,000, $85,000 a year like that. And that has a giant effect on the economy. But the problem is that when the dollar gets stronger, if you couple that with tariffs, you could see the prices on offshore produced products jumping 25, 30%. Maybe that's a little aggressive, but I'd rather say that and be wrong than say that and be right.
Right.
But that's really what everybody's sort of talking about and what everybody's sort of taking a look at. But the petroleum piece, that's a given. That's what they used to supercharge the economy more than 4 years ago, and it was going gangbusters. And so they're going to take a look at that, and they're going to say, just put the foot on the accelerator and go. But I don't think a lot of people realize how much in the last decade RBG products have been farmed out to be printed offshore in China, particularly. There are a couple of exceptions to that, and there are great domestic printers, but the greatest exception is Trollord Games. The Chenaults took a look at the way that things were. They did not like it. They wanted to have a much tighter control over their product, and they literally built out a print shop. And at the start of COVID, they were brilliantly smart and grabbed all the paper they possibly could, to the point that when everybody else watched the prices of paper triple for things that they were trying to get printed, Trollord was sitting on a warehouse full of paper, and it didn't affect them, and they were able to get through all of this. And so what does that mean? Well, if Ron and I have 50,000 miniatures, his are painted, mine are unpainted, it's not like I got to be knocking the door down to buy more miniatures, but all of the things that we're used to are probably going to see, particularly Gaines Workshop, Infinity, some of the other miniature manufacturers. The lead belt's in England. The lead belt is in England. So Warlord, et cetera, et cetera. And then the printing, the overseas printing, this is a great chance for domestic printers to grab that share. But a lot of the RPG market, including, I think, Wizards, prints overseas. And they print overseas in such numbers, it could put another $10 MSRP on the books that already exist. And I guess the point I would make is, if you have things that you've thought about getting, or you are younger and are thinking about asking for stuff for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatnot, you should be lining that up now. You really, really should, because I think if the tariffs go into place, and they certainly seem aggressively interested in pursuing something along those lines, we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do. But the stiffest tariffs that I've heard discussed, and I've been reading about, I don't know if it's that, but if it's a 15%, a 20% tariff, that's going to show up at our pocketbooks. So
the article I actually read on the Bell of Lost Souls is, and the way I always like to preface this when I talk with other people that aren't as knowledgeable, remember, a tariff is a negotiation tactic too. The idea is this is the number I'm talking about, but maybe we'll find a middle ground that works a little bit better for both sides. But they're talking about 20% tariff across the board, at least according to the article, and China getting another 20 to 100% on top of that.
So let me just say one thing, though. Bell of Lost Souls.
I know. And
I'm not going to say anything else other than there are a lot of places I go on the internet, and there are a lot of places I don't go on the internet. And the Bell of Lost Souls is one of the places I never go on the internet.
I know, but you know what? They actually interviewed people that they named, and they actually linked to some articles. But I went beyond that because I had to. And apparently already, under the current administration, there are tariffs on certain Chinese products like uh, solar batteries, solar panels, and EV batteries that are as high as 100%. So
Wow.
it's not like we're not already playing this little thing. So my fear, and this is just, I remember when postal rates went up and Kickstarters that were long in the tooth all
Oh, yeah.
started shitting the bed because they had planned. This is back when a lot of Kickstarters didn't charge you shipping because it was part of the price. It wasn't that bad. And then overnight, shipping virtually doubled, and overseas shipping went insane. And all of a sudden, they were like, "Oh, we can't. How do we?"
Right.
I'm
Right.
afraid we're going to have current projects that are in the pipeline that already figured the price to print will be X, and now the price to print is going to be Z, and we may see a number of projects that have funded not fulfill because they're going to be out of money.
Well, and I think Ron, Ron is Ron and Mike both. You guys are just as familiar as I am with what it's like to ship products to Canada or to ship products from Canada. And,
Absolutely.
and the sheer, I mean, rates for shipping were going like this, and then all of a sudden it looks like El Capitan. And those rates have not gone down. Those rates have not been subsidized by anything. And literally you'll win something from a Canadian seller and pay almost double to triple reasonable items in shipping. And you just can't believe it. Canadian buyers are punished by the amounts that it costs to ship things up there. And I think all of this ties in, right? But I think, yes, we're in for a very interesting time economically with some of the things that are proposed by the new administration coming in. And you're right, Eric, you're absolutely right. EV sales, all the batteries, the things you're talking about, I just think that this is another trickle down effect. Games Workshop usually visits prices in the first quarter, January, February time frame. They give plenty of warning on this and so on and so forth. There's a certain amount of leeway that's built into the pricing model and how they handle prices. I'm familiar with that. You also have to have a built-in buffer for variations in currency and so on and so forth.
Right.
Historically, the 45th president did not like a super strong dollar because of the effect it had on U.S. trade. It made things harder. So we'll see. I think anybody saying the sky is falling right now is a little out of line. I think more than anything else, I think it's, hey, you may want to think about this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're going to find that some U.S. companies that rely on exports, once the dueling tariffs start, they're going to push back and they're going to ask for some relief as well. So to Jim's point, it's all negotiation. I think that 20% number is going to be a moving target number, and it's going to come in somewhat below that, or for certain products it may not be anything at all. But you know what? It sounded good.
Yes,
it sounded good on the campaign trail. So that's.
But let me throw one other thing out, and I think this is a great example of what people don't think about day to day. So Kenner very famously got the right to do Star Wars figures and brought out Star Wars action figures. And you may be familiar that they didn't even have them for Christmas. You got a piece of paper, and then they came out. And as what most people don't remember, or most people have forgotten, is that the MSRP on a 3 3/4 inch Star Wars action figure in 1978-79 was $1.25. That was the suggested MSRP from Kenner. That was what they made them for, to be sold for. There were a lot of stores that because of demand doubled the price. Some of them tripled the price. but $1.25 was what they went for MSRP in 1978. I was in a Target 2 days ago, and I saw on the card Star Wars 3 and 375, 3 and 3 inch, 373 and 3/75 inch action figure.
Mhm.
Exactly the same thing. I'd like the panel to guess the price, the MSRP, because that's what Target sells at. Guess the price.
$9.99.
Keep going.
Oh dear.
Oh no.
Are you sitting down?
$14.99.
$27.
Jeez.
What?
Now they can claim it's collectible.
Right.
They can claim that, it's part of a limited subset or whatever. But somebody at Hasbro convinced Target Corporation to not only carry this in the store, but sell this in the store, and that it would sell through at the retail level. Will it? I doubt it. I just don't think so. But
Right.
but it still got made. The deal got signed and the whole 9 yards. And so today I was in a store where they had, I think it's the 5th edition. Sorry, the 5th printing of the Monster Manual, or the 6th. Whichever is the widest, largest number for the Monster Manual. The 1st edition AD&D Monster Manual by Gygax. I think it's either the 5th or 6th is the single largest printing.
Okay.
I saw one at a store today, and they had it in a poly bag, and it was in, I'll say, good minus condition, right? It had been played, it had been used. This was somebody's Monster Manual. This wasn't a shelf queen. This thing got played. And they had an MSRP of $60 on it. They had a price tag of $60 on it. And I actually pulled it out to take a look at it and see what printing it was.
Right.
And I was talking to the manager of the store, and I said, so how often do you get these in, and how often do you sell them? And he says, well, they usually last a couple of weeks. Somebody will see it, somebody will think about it, somebody will come in, and it almost always sells. And he said, and usually once we have one, it takes a while, but somebody sees it and thinks, oh, I've got some in a box somewhere. And then he says, we get in a box of stuff and we price it, we put it up. He says, but I can sell those at $60 all day long. And I can't remember. Ron, was the Monster Manual $5 when it came out originally?
No, the Monster Manual was 12.
Yeah, it was. I
Oh,
think
the
it was.
Monster Manual was 12, and the DMG was 15. I think the
Okay.
players can't look in the
Sure,
Yeah.
but we're talking about a used copy of the book,
Yeah.
and it's $60, right? And
5 times the price.
right.
At this, but now, I remember as a kid when you get the Matchbox cars, because those were great because they were metal, they were made in England. If you went down to the hairdresser, they had them in little boxes, and it was a treat. And they were like $1.79 back in the 70s. And now the cheap ass Matchbox cars are like $1.25 at Walmart.
Yeah, and Hot Wheels. I'm sorry, Mattel owns Hot Wheels and Matchbox.
Yep.
But Old School Rules has something here about $1.25 in 1974 equals $7.99 in 20. No, it doesn't, because the $7.99 price point, they blew into that. Hasbro blew into that sometime in the early 90s. When the Power of the Force action figures came out, they were at that price point in 1993, 94-ish, somewhere in there. But they're well past that price point. And
Right.
and my point in all of this is simply inflationary cost, right? That's always going up in the background, and we don't always think about that. We can always, some of us remember $1 gas a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Below
With gas
$1,
in the bucket.
98 cents,
Right.
When they had to put that one in front of it, everybody went,
Right. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, right? I'm not saying it's not an ouch factor and so forth. But yes, inflation over time is constantly in the background. But what we've seen when we have a period like the last 3 or 4 years, where literally food costs have tripled and so on and so forth. I am now connected to a farm family. I hear all about crop inputs. For 25 years, I've heard about crop inputs, cost of gas, and all the rest of this stuff. And I can tell you, right, those costs have skyrocketed, particularly sharply over the last few years. So we'll see a strong dollar, right? Gary Oliver's talking about petroleum production in the chat. We'll see a strong dollar come back somehow, some way, because it's an easy way to fight inflation, and it puts people to work. But
Yeah.
for us, for those of us who play, those of us who love games, those of us who want, interestingly, I saw several good reviews of the new players handbook this week. I don't have one yet. It's probably somewhere on my would like to buy list, but I just, it hasn't percolated up to the top right now. But I was encouraged by that, right? Not because I don't want to see the overly negative, but I also know that it's Christmas, right? They just got the DM's guide out this week, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that we're going into a holiday season with a player's handbook and a DM's guide that frankly, and I'll just say it, kids can ask for presents, right? I love that. I love that idea. And I'll say this right now, we are getting into the time of year where Target and Barnes and Noble and Walmart and Amazon are going to drop the price on the really great D&D starter box sets to half price. Just watch. And when you see that, if you can, buy a couple and throw them into the Toys for Tots bin. I always do every year. I buy a handful of them and I donate them and I don't look back. Because if you want the hobby to grow, you got to spread the hobby and share the hobby. And it's an easy way.
Absolutely.
Mike, do you know your camera's off? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
He's
But-
naked.
That's all.
That's all.
Yeah, it crashed. My camera
Okay.
crashed. It's gone.
But I would throw that
Yeah,
out
turn
there
it on.
because really and truly, as we get closer to Black Friday, those aggressive price points and those aggressive cuts are coming. Take advantage of that and use that. Right? Be smart about this stuff. So.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, I ran my game this week. I had a very seminal moment in my game on Monday night. And if you didn't tune in last week, after we made Jared cry, I talked about my game. I talked about my game and said, I'm running a top secret game. The party's gone off to a good start and so on. So this week, I was once again reminded of the axiom that I always say, which is no well-laid plans survive contact with the party. And so, I had a few red herrings, but heck no, those weren't enough red herrings. The party decided to track down some other things. And they were not a part of the adventure. And then, for a spy game, they're about as subtle as bricks, and that was kind of fun to watch.
Well, that's the usual party when it comes to a
Right,
spy.
right. And so, by the end of the evening, I was sort of chuckling, and I was also pulling my hair out because then this is a good thing to talk about. We have players who are very much go get them, right? We all know those players. We have players who are disruptors, and they are looking to blow up the world. They're just waiting for the right time. And we have passive players, right? And these are the folks that sort of let the game sort of wash over them a little bit. And it's very hard when you're running a game to try to tamp down the disruptors, time it. And I'm promising my disruptors, your time is coming next week. Just wait. And the folks that are very much like, let's go, 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 go. You have to temper that. And your passive players, you have to continue to draw them in, and you have to find a way to get them excited, and so on and so forth. And so I walked away from the game on Monday night, and I had a lot of thoughts about things I want to change and things I want to do, and some other things. And I think when you run a game, you have to always be willing to make up stuff on the fly. What a surprise. But also to really look hard at your group that you're playing with and figure out how you can get the best out of those three aspects of players. and you've got to have something for everybody, but particularly passive players, they're letting your content sort of waft over them, and it's very hard to get feedback from passive players. You have got to figure out a way to draw them out, right? The most enjoyable moment for me on Monday night was one of the players is in fact an FBI profiler who sat outside of a building and observed the building. And while I wasn't quite exactly sure why the person who would probably be one of the best for interrogating people was outside of the building, I still let them do it. I wasn't going to interfere with their clever plans, as they were, but it certainly put me to mind of some things I'm going to do differently next week. So it'll be good fun.
Nice.
Was what you say? It's really interesting because I always see people, when they ask advice in the D&D columns or the forums or the web pages or the Facebook pages, there's always a person has to ask a question that, my group's not playing like I want them to play, and they'll go into some long story about, I play in this and they did this, and I think it boils down to a lot of things. But I think the thing you have to remember is, you're the DM, but you have to tailor your game to your players. And if your players are, or let's say I'm not a big puzzle gamer. The players I play with don't like puzzles. They're not really interested in investigative stuff. They what they like? They like tactical combat. They like to get in big giant free-for-alls and get, okay, here's this guy's doing, this guy's over here. And so, I tailored the game that way because they have fun, I have fun, everything's great. If I ran an investigative, storytelling game, they would play it and they'd probably do it well, but they wouldn't be happy with it. And what's the point of wasting everybody's time if the players aren't happy? Because then the DM's not happy. The players aren't happy, the DM's not happy. I mean, you're probably not having a good time if your players aren't having a good time. You really, and I just tell people, especially your first time DM, just try to tailor the player towards the expectation. Try to tailor the game towards the expectations of players. Now, if this is something you absolutely hate, let's say you just absolutely detest tactical combat. Well, then I would say find a group that doesn't like tactical combat is what it boils down to, because you're never going to be able to stick that square peg in that round hole.
Nope.
But no, that's very important, is to match your game to the expectations of the players you're playing with.
Yes. And I'm having a great time. I'm enjoying it. I think it's very silly and very funny, and I have sat dumbfounded at some of the things that the players have latched onto, and I've really enjoyed it. But the other is that I've enjoyed watching the players who I've given some great leads to the next element, and they've just ignored them completely, which is just a lot of fun. And finally, an hour and a half into the game this evening, or the game on Monday night, I was like, "Hey, what about blank?" And they were like, right.
Blank?
Yeah, well, it was a picture. But they had, I don't know who's got that. I think I've got it. What are you going to do with it? Oh, so very fun, very silly, but a great reminder of you have to have patience, and you have to make it a rewarding experience, and you have to have something sort of going so that they don't fall asleep on you in the course of 4 hours. And I'm enjoying it. I genuinely am, and I have, I've got a lot of things going. I have approached this game as a cinematic event. I really want it to be like in a movie. I want it to be like a movie. And so what I told the players on Tuesday or Monday night as we wrapped up, I said, okay. I said, if this entire adventure is an action-packed thrill ride movie, you've seen the trailer. And there's a car chase. And I'm just telling you, there's probably going to be a car chase next week. They have no idea what that car chase is going to be like. We're going to have a hell of a lot of fun next week. So,
well, it's like we were talking about hex crawls last week or the week before, about how some players get there and they get paralyzed, and it's analysis by paralysis by analysis. Well, I don't know what to do. I mean, do we go this hex or that hex or what? And they just sit there and they stare at you, and then finally you're like, oh hell, well, here's the rumor list. You pick a rumor. I mean, let's just do this. And some players just aren't equipped for that kind of a game. It's tough for them. They can't sit. But then, how much do you lead as a GM or a DM? I mean, how much? Do people feel comfortable saying, look, go to point. You're at A, go to B.
Yep.
Or do you say no? I'm not going to do anything till they. I mean, I've told stories before about Rob Kuntz's style. Rob Kuntz is a completely naturalistic DM. He is absolutely happy with you wandering around the dungeon all night doing nothing if that's what your players will do, and he will give you no direction.
Nope.
And if he rolls up no wandering monsters all night long, guess what? You get no wandering monsters all night long, even if you're bored out of your skull 3 hours into the game. If he's not rolling it, and so he's that totally naturalistic, I guess, 70s. Hey, whatever the dice say goes. I'm just here to roll the dice, but. We've kind of evolved past it, I think, in our gaming, gaming mastery, I guess, the last 4 decades, where we're like, these guys look like they're about to fall asleep here. I'm going to look, I didn't roll Wandering Monster last hour, but I'm going to throw a damn Wandering Monster at them just to wake everybody up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I play. I like to have things happen right off the bat and let's get everybody involved. Let's get the juices flowing, especially when I'm doing a con game. The minute you walk to the dungeon,
it's
boom,
all about
combat.
pacing. Players involved.
Yeah.
Listen, I've been playing in Joe the Lawyer's 2E game, which we always joke, by the book with 20 pages of house rules. But we've been doing it now, I realize, for over 1.5 years. We play every other week. And in this 1.5 years of gameplay, where of the core party of 6, 3 people are playing priests. Including me. Don't ask. It's just all right. I'm a gnomish priest from the 2E source book for the gnomish for the demi-human god. So I get to cast illusionist spells as part of one of my spheres. So it's actually a pretty powerful character if you think outside the box. But Joe, and we've been pointing this out to him, he's used to running games with his old group, which the players were facing every problem head on. You give them something, they latch their teeth onto it, and they go for it. But I'm playing in a group with a bunch of game designers and GMs by nature. Rob Conley, Greg Christopher, Tim Shorts. I mean, these are the people. So we come up with the most bizarrely weird plans that work. We killed the dragon by having another dragon kill the dragon that was the smaller one. We set the dragon up. Once we found out from he's like, I didn't expect you guys to take out the orc, scouting party. I'm like, why? We always go for the edges first, and then we interrogate them and find out there's a dragon that's larger than our dragon that we were going to use. We'll set up our dragon to get killed. Do we get experience points for the dragon that we just for the white dragon that was still young that we just rescued? Do we get experience points if this thing kills it? He's like, I guess. All right. Well, we're going to set this trap up. He's like, I thought you guys were going to go right in and I had a dragon waiting for you. I'm like, yeah, we don't do that. We can't do that. That's give us some credit. We're not going to, we spend so much time planning stuff out. It is hilarious, but it's the reason why we've only had one and Joe has no problem killing it. We've only had one death, and that was Rob Conley, because Rob admits it. He goes, I was stupid. He was in character, but he was stupid. He kissed a water nymph on the lips. We're all telling him, don't do it.
Yeah, as one will.
Yeah, I was playing his character to the hilt. I was like, all right, Grew the Wanderer. But you do have to, at conventions, it's different because you don't know what you're going to have sitting at your table, right? So you don't, if you're playing with the same group for 1.5 years, you should have an idea that, all right, they nip at the edges. They never kind of go directly where you want them to go. They're not going to face anything head on. They're going to play the odds. Convention groups are often a bit more headstrong because they figure I got 3 hours, 4 hours. We have a goal. Let's get to it. You can expect that head-on stuff.
And they're not emotionally invested in their characters either, because these are one-off characters. So, well, let's just shoot the orcs
if I get killed in the first 2 hours, I just go to the bar early. It'll still be okay.
Right.
Where you play a character for 1.5 years, you don't want to lose that character. It's a different atmosphere, different way to play.
Yeah, the last session I had is not one I would ever run in a con game. Matter of fact, we haven't had a session like that, it was a very talky session. It was combat in the beginning, and then a lot of talk combat the first 3 or 4 hours, then a long talky the last hour. And they even said beforehand, they said, "Man, we really liked the session before this a lot, where it was combat for 6 hours." I said, "I know." They said, "But we understand what happened. The plot got advanced here." I said, "Yeah, you understand that, but I'm not going to run the same thing at you every time. We're not going to have a 6 hour tactical combat every time." They said, no, we understand. But we like that a lot. We like tactical combat, but we understand what you were doing here, which is basically setting up the further adventures in the Underdark for my dwarven party. But it wasn't. I would never do that at a con game because I wouldn't want to waste time in an hour of, talking or basically questioning somebody about what's going on in this part of the dungeon, this and that, and they're writing down stuff frantically as he's giving them tidbits and hints. But yeah, convention games are absolutely different in that regard because you want to get to the action, you want to engage people immediately, which is why you should have pre-gens and just hand them out, and within 15 minutes you should be in the dungeon adventuring. That's always been my rule running convention games. 15 minutes, you're on the steps of the dungeon after and then you're walking in. We're walking in. Let's get going.
I think one of the things that has helped me on Monday nights is that I always have a list of the things that the party has discovered that they're still working on, the things I'd like to sort of have them accomplish by the end of the night, and I have that so that I sort of have an idea where we're going during the course of the 4 hours and how we're chewing through that list and so on and so forth. And so far in 2 weeks, they've pretty much managed to stay on track. There's still some things niggling over from week one, but eventually they'll get those to ground. And so I've already started making the notes for next week, and I know what my objectives are to where I want them by the end of week 3 and so on and so forth. And I think it'll either run 5 or 6 weeks, but we'll see. Cross our fingers.
Well, I'm interested in hearing. I don't. There are not too many people running top secret campaigns out there these days. I'm really interested in hearing how that turns out. So,
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if they have a good time, that's great. And if they don't, I won't be doing this again.
But you can have the post-mortem on the show though, and let us know what happened.
Oh gosh, yes. I'll tell the whole plot. We'll have lots of silliness, but I do really enjoy when you pretty much, they find something at a location and it's clearly like a thing. And the party just looks right past that. And then they want to go back to a prior location. They want to ask about, and you're like, nothing's changed. Okay. And then 2 hours later, well, we should go back to, don't go back. Don't go back. It's fine.
Did we ask the right questions? Yes, you asked. Move on. Let's move it on along.
Yes. So herding the cats, as it were.
Isn't it always?
So,
well,
I don't know. Anything else interesting? I was trying to think. There was one other thing that was knocking around in my head, and I can't remember.
I cannot think of anything interesting in that regard. I was trying to think if there's any good gossip I heard the last week regarding.
Oh, I know what I should talk about.
Oh, there we go.
I know what we should talk about. So,
all right.
So there was a very interesting post this weekend on Reddit, and then in the Dave Trampier appreciation Facebook group. And essentially, Tramp's widow, Mary, died a few months ago. And tragically, it appears that she was dead for about a month before they discovered her. And so I don't know if it was the city or the state, but somebody determined that due to the nature of things that her trailer was in fact a biohazard.
Oh.
And so they apparently a couple of weeks ago began emptying out her trailer. And they may, and I'll stress may, have discovered some of Tramp's original artwork or reproductions for the purposes of printing. I've seen a couple of the pictures that were up briefly before the post then went down. but they didn't start to clean the house until, or sorry, they didn't start to clean the trailer till about a couple of weeks ago. So somebody essentially has the box of contents. There is a question of ownership, but it appears that whoever it is that's been cleaning out the trailer has some form or something signed off on by a member of the
Right.
family of either Weber brothers, I guess. And so I saw a couple of the pages. I couldn't tell for certain if they were actual the originals or if they were the copies used for printing. There were some reduction notes on them. There were also the little printer's marks, the little sort of circle with the lines
Right.
to
Very
cross
cool.
through them. So I think it's still TBD, but it also just goes to show, there's still stuff out there in them thar hills.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time, Jim, and that's
Yeah.
so true. That as we get older and people pass away and things happen, and yeah, I mean, like I said, that the big one is always the Dave Arneson storage shed that got
Yes.
totally forgotten after he died.
Where the storage company, again, let's stress this, the storage company begged the family to just catch them up on the owed amount and clean it out. Tried to do the right thing at every step of the way. And the family were just like, yeah, can't be bothered. Don't want it. Don't care. Doesn't matter.
Dave's old stuff. Who cares about that stuff? Let's move on to
It's such a common theme, though. Mike and I have talked a few times about Jason Zavoda, the collector Jason Zavoda, and
yeah,
he was living in deplorable conditions at the end of his life, surrounded by his gaming stuff and voluminous amounts of gaming stuff, like
right
beyond what I can describe. And the family was dumping things into the free bin at Charles, a professional scavenger, got an eye on it and said, "Oh, I think this stuff's worth money." And it turned out he actually knew Jason because he was his driver for the state of Delaware, who would pick Jason up with his free transport. So he gets in there and he cleans out the house, and a lot of vermin and things like that in the house. And he starts to sell the things on eBay without really having a clue. And I'm buying things off him. I don't know it's Jason stuff, and I'm getting stuff and it's incomplete. So, I reach out to him. I say, "Hey, man, like, you keep selling incomplete stuff. Like, what are you doing? I see you're pretty local to me. You're out of Delaware." I said, I really need to come switch this stuff out, or we need to work something out. And guy tells me, "Well, you know what? I own a place down at the Jersey Shore. I'll swing by." Okay, he comes by with a carload full of stuff that he wants to sell me. And I'm looking at the stuff and I'm like, "Where'd you get this? Because this isn't your collection. Like, where'd you get it?" And he starts describing the situation. And I said, "This is Jason Zavoda. This is Jason Zavoda's stuff." He goes, "How do you know that?" I said, "Am I wrong?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Okay." And he proceeds to tell me the story. And he was so over his head. I mean, the guy has a huge, like, old house in Newcastle, Delaware. He was so in over his head. He had filled up 4 bedrooms, floor to ceiling, with bins with all of Jason's stuff. And
wow.
I had to talk with him. I said, this is beyond
right.
you. I mean, I sent it, but historical stuff, fantasy stuff, sci-fi stuff, miniatures, comic books. Like, I'd never seen anything like that. And I was glad to be able to kind of grab the gaming stuff and be able to get it out there. into the community, so
Right.
to speak. But boy, that could have ended really badly.
Yes. Yes.
And by the way, that was one of Jason's
Mhm.
fears towards the last years of his life, is that literally, and he would talk to people like Ron and I and said, "Look, I'm so afraid my family's just going to
And
throw
they
everything in
did.
the dumpster because they don't think it's free."
And they
did.
Yeah, he was absolutely right, and it's just really sad because great guy and longtime collector. Used to own comic stores in the '90s, and just he had a lot of stuff, and that's one of the once again one of the reasons why we always proselytize about making sure that you know what to do with your stuff if something happens to you, because that this is what this is a chance if this will happen. Is
And-
this stuff will get just tossed in a dumpster by a person that just doesn't know any
Yeah.
better. So
And that's a good segue to the last thing that I had sort of on my list of notes. So Clay Bors is now selling some things that were given to the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum for the benefit of Ernie Gygax and Jeff Leeson. And so I think there's about a dozen things up on eBay. Most of it look like shrink wrapped modules. I'm not sure how they decided what to give back to whom, but I think in the debacle that was the Dungeon Hobby Shop, I think that's a safe word to use. A couple of the players who did not wind up on the bad end of things are people like Jeff Leeson and Ernie. Ernie was running games out of the Dungeon Hobby Shop, and obviously, if you have any familiarity with the issue, Jeff was actually sort of, I'll say, curator. I think that's an okay term to use. But supposedly the proceeds from the auction are going to be going to the two of them. And I'll throw that out there so that if you do see that and you're wondering what's going on or whatnot, that's what I've read this week. Then I saw a link to the auctions, and so, as the shutters are coming down on the Dungeon Hobby Shop story, and it's finally sort of winding down or whatever, I'm very glad that somebody decided to donate some shrink wrapped modules to the Dungeon Hobby Shop. I hope whoever it was that donated it is perfectly glad to see them being sold to benefit the two people who probably lent the most to the Dungeon Hobby Shop in time and effort. And I don't really have a whole lot else to say other than to just sort of keep an eye open for it, and we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're welcome, and thank you for having me. I think my camera bit the dust again, or my microphone. Let's see if we can get it hooked back up. But
You're good. We can see you.
no, we can see and hear you.
Yeah,
Now
we
my
can hear you,
camera
Ron.
did bite the dust. I'm going to reboot after this to see if I didn't
we
kill
got
it for good.
like a computer virus going around here. Everybody
Stop.
Stop. Here we go. I think we got it now.
All right.
You mentioned Clay Boris. He's actually one of the individual that consigned a bunch of items to the charity auction at Page. In fact, that box arrived today, but it looks like it's all
good.
Jim Ward stuff to me.
Yeah, there's a fair amount that Clay's got to work.
Yeah, I saw the link you're referring to, Jim. It had it was shared by Ernie, and you could go to the Jim Ward stuff or the Dungeon Hobby Shop stuff. There were two separate collections there. Jim, thank you. Mike, thank you for turning off your camera. We do appreciate it.
No, I mean, I had to take a shower.
Okay, man.
No details. No details.
Yeah, no.
It'll be on my Grinder account later tonight.
Jesus, that's not a thought that I wanted to ever have. Folks, as always, live stream tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Also hang out on the Discord server at 9. Live stream on Friday at 8. Saturday at 8. There's a lot of live streams. Oh, and there may be an announcement on Saturday, but I'll get to that later. Saturday.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I can't
exciting.
say nothing until nothing. All right,
Damn it.
folks. On that note, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. I'll see some of you all tomorrow.